The big turning point for me was sophomore year. I found out that I was gluten intolerant while I was living on campus. And I've always been very interested in health and wellness and passionate about food. And I love to cook. And so I think it was just a culmination of all these different things. And then finding out that I was gluten intolerant while also taking all these business courses, it just was like the right place at the right time. And ultimately launched a food blog called Slender Seven, where I started sharing my healthy gluten-free recipes that used 7 ingredients or less. So that was really the foundation for PS Snacks.
And so here we had this dilemma, this fact.
I've been almost a decade researching this subject.
Every aspect of your metabolic health improves.
From the Hint offices in San Francisco, I'm Kara Goldin, founder and CEO of Hint. You may have tried Hint water before, but this is my podcast. Each week, we talk to some of the most creative entrepreneurs, from world-touring pop stars like Jay Sean to the people behind favorite Instagram accounts, including So Yummy, New York City, and even YouTubers like Sarah Dietschy. So the million-dollar question, what does it really take to be unstoppable? Let's find out.
Hey everybody, it's Kara with Unstoppable, and today we're here on Unstoppable with Nikki Azzara with PS Snacks. Hi Nikki.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Super excited that you're here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, totally. So Nikki is from Denver, but or actually lives in Denver.
Yes.
I don't know yet if she's actually from Denver. And she's here in San Francisco for the fancy food. So we got her fancy food show. So we got her to come over and join us for this morning before she goes back to the show. And thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Totally. So first, I'm just going to jump in and just ask a little bit about you.
Perfect.
So first of all, where did you grow up? And, what did you want to do as a starting point?
Yeah, I grew up in the Washington, D.C. suburbs, so the Montgomery County, Maryland, about 25 miles outside of the city. It's funny, I was asked that recently, what did I want to do when I grew up? And one of the amazing things about this venture is that I didn't really have the time to think about that, because when I graduated from college, I immediately jumped right in. So I guess looking back when I was younger, what did I want to do with my life? I think I was really interested in like houses. I remember telling my parents I wanted to be either a real estate agent or architect or something like that. But I soon after realized that I wasn't cut out for the corporate world. And in high school, started coming up with ways to just make money in a more entrepreneurial fashion. So I started summer camps and doing all different types of things where I could actually interact with people in a way that brought me joy each day, but I could also make some money on the side.
So fun. So you talked about college. So
yes.
You were in college when you thought up this idea.
I was, yes. So
how did that all come about?
Yeah. So I went to Wake Forest University. I was studying undergrad business, taking electives in marketing and entrepreneurship. I, again, always thought that I had this other kind of business route in mind where I was very passionate about doing something that didn't require me to sit at a desk, just didn't know what it was at the time. The big turning point for me was sophomore year. I found out that I was gluten intolerant while I was living on campus. And I've always been very interested in health and wellness and passionate about food. And I love to cook. And so I think it was just a culmination of all these different things. And then finding out that I was gluten intolerant while also taking all these business courses, it just was like the right place at the right time. And ultimately launched a food blog called Slender Seven, where I started sharing my healthy gluten-free recipes that used 7 ingredients or less. So that was really the foundation for PS Snacks.
And did you feel like, so you're a sophomore, you're just like not feeling great and you figure out that you've got this issue. Was it tough to sort of eat and live and on campus? I mean, was it something that was like, did you really have to work in order to do that?
It definitely, so the biggest difficulty was that I wasn't feeling great at times when I would eat certain things, but at the time, couldn't really figure out what it was. But it was right before I studied abroad in Italy. So that was not the best timing, finding out that, I have to cut out gluten.
Breads.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was a bummer, but it ended up, I think, just being a really good like learning way for me to get acclimated, not only in a new environment, but just navigating gluten-free lifestyle. It was honestly just like the nature of the way that I eat and the way that we were raised. My sister and I were raised just eat super healthy. And I always prefer fish and chicken and vegetables anyways. So it actually wasn't as difficult as I was expecting. And I mean, that was almost 7 years ago. And I feel like just feeling so much better and super happy that I ended up.
Were you in the dorms at the time or were you?
Yeah. So I was living in dorms and then living in this apartment in Florence. We had access to a kitchen. So I was able to pretty well navigate this gluten-free lifestyle. And then moving back on campus, that was a big turning point because we had the dining hall, which was, I mean, it was great. There were options. Again, it was like, okay, I'll have the turkey burger, the chicken, the vegetables, the salad, things like that. But also, you know, with the snacks, and there was so much that I couldn't eat on campus. And there was a Whole Foods nearby. And so I really started to spend a lot of time in Whole Foods finding these alternatives that fit my gluten-free lifestyle, but also just things that like weren't too high in sugar or not too processed. And I think because of that, it really challenged me to start learning about the food industry just through experience, which was huge for this foundation.
And that's what I feel like has been the biggest challenge for the gluten-free industry over the last, few years since, I've been going to the fancy food show.
Right.
It's just, the trade-off is the sugar.
Yes.
Right? It's just like in the processed and et cetera. But it's, people will say to me, yeah, it's, figured out that I was gluten intolerant, and then I started eating all these gluten foods and I gained all this weight, or I got type 2 diabetes.
Right. And that's something, I mean, people will ask me all the time, either they're trying to eat more of a gluten-free lifestyle, or I just think the biggest thing is like, just because you're gluten-free doesn't mean you should start buying the gluten-free bread, because it doesn't mean that it's healthier for you.
Yeah.
So for me, it was more a shift in like, okay, I mean, that sandwich looks really good, but I'm going to get a salad instead, or I'm going to see if they have a lettuce wrap, or I'm going to have the chicken instead of pasta. So it was more just like a shift in general, where I wasn't now eating gluten-free cookies, because it wasn't like I was really eating like handfuls of cookies before.
Yeah.
So that was something that was really important. Just because you're gluten-free, don't change your eating habits.
Yeah, exactly. So one of your products is the chickpea based cookie.
Yes.
So, you gotta have cookies when you're in college, right?
Exactly. So this.
How did you think of that?
Yeah. So I had this blog, Slender Seven, and what I was trying to do with this was recreate, I should say, my favorite things that were not only gluten-free, but just healthier alternatives to those favorites.
Yep.
And it was anything, I mean, I had over 500 recipes, and it was anything from smoothies that tasted like milkshakes to main meals to things with cooking with sweet potatoes, because I think that's my favorite food of all time. And then it really started. So I tricked my sister into eating black bean brownies. And, I was over the holidays, and I remember just like getting a huge kick out of the fact that I made these brownies that actually tasted really good. And it was black bean based, and I had come up with the recipe.
That sounds so good, actually.
Yeah, it was delicious. And like, I'm the youngest or younger sister. There's only two of us, but I got the pleasure and just kind of messing with her by making the black bean based brownies that were also peanut free. She has a peanut allergy. So that sparked my interest in creating a blondie version. So my mom, when we were younger, she was always famous for making these blondies. But of course, they're, so like buttery and sugary and regular white flour and just kind of all the crap that goes in with this home batch made blondies, which was always like the famous thing. But again, it was like, okay, how could I recreate this in a way that's healthier and gluten-free, not just using gluten-free flour? So I ended up playing around with the chickpeas and made a recipe for chickpea cookies. And it was
chickpea flour?
No, so I actually used chickpea puree.
Oh.
So almost like you'd be making a hummus, but instead you're adding ingredients that make it have a sweet flavor profile. Instead of like olive oil and lemon juice, I'm doing coconut oil, almond butter, chocolate chips, vanilla, things like that. So I had this recipe on the blog, didn't think much of it for, let's call it 8 months, except for the fact that it was one of the most popular on social media. All my friends would always ask me to make it, my family. I remember when I graduated that summer, I just was constantly making it for people that were in and out of the door, whether it was at the beach house or my family's house. And that was this aha moment where I, at the time, was looking for jobs in the food industry because I realized that's what I was passionate about. But then through spending so much time at Whole Foods and trying to interview for consumer packaged good brands, I saw that there was an opportunity to launch my own brand. And I wanted to start with this chickpea cookie, which actually the dough form was what I thought was the most compelling sell.
So how many years out of school were you?
2 months.
2 months out of school.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you just decided, okay, I'm interviewing, but I've got this idea for a product.
Yes.
And then what did you do next? Did you just go and create the product? Or?
Yeah. So it was, I had always hoped that the summer after graduation, I could just work on the blog and take some time to travel and just really chill, I guess. I mean, I've always been.
Chilling would be nice, right?
Yeah. I'm definitely
people know it's like really hard.
Right. So at the time I was like, okay, I had a lot of friends that had already committed to banking jobs and consulting. And I just, again, knew that I wasn't cut out for that. So rather than rush into a career that I didn't even know if that's what I wanted, I just was trying to take some time and really do some soul searching about what it was that I wanted to do. And that's where I first stumbled upon the food industry, looking at amazing brands, going through Whole Foods and trying to figure out which one of these I could work for, where they were located, what sparked my interest. But ultimately saw that there was this need and opening in the market for the cookie dough. And I think just being naive and super passionate and, again, not wanting to do the typical banking and corporate route, I jumped on the opportunity to turn this recipe into a consumer packaged good that I could sell to retail stores.
So to create the product, so you needed some kind of funding. Did you self-fund it initially? Or?
So I actually first launched a crowdfunding campaign. And at the time, the product was going to be branded under Slender Seven, which was the blog that I had started. I had envisioned at that time creating like a whole, I guess, ecosystem of the blog and the recipes and the products and, having kind of a aggressively large vision to really build out this huge lifestyle brand. So ultimately at the time had this idea to brand it as Slender Seven. It was 7 ingredients or less. We had cookie dough. The logo was a grapefruit. So, again, it seemed like a good idea when I first launched. I ended up doing a crowdfunding campaign, raised about $10,000, and that helped me join a commissary kitchen in Washington, D.C., where I could really get started, lowered the barriers to entry, and I could start producing and attempting to sell.
So how do those work? Like for people who want to start a product?
Yeah. So
I've heard about these actually in the Bay Area.
Right. Yeah, they're popping up everywhere. And I worked out of one called Union Kitchen in Washington, D.C. And you basically pay rent to work in their facility. But the incredible thing is that it's a licensed facility. So rather than me having to go out and get certifications and licensing to produce food products, that was already taken care of. So I paid a monthly rent fee and then started working to create this package. Again, looking back, I think it was so, I guess I've heard if you're not embarrassed by your first package, like you're doing something wrong.
Well, you learned so much.
You learned
Somebody was
so
asking
much.
Me a talk that I was giving the other night. They were looking to develop a product and, they wanted to know how long it should take. And they were very rules based.
Right.
Really. And I just said, at the end of the day, I would just make sure that it's safe and get it to market.
Right. And that's
see what the consumer says.
Exactly what I was doing. I mean, I feel like I'm the definition of winging it sometimes because on one hand, I think the fact that I did start this right after college, sometimes I'm at a disadvantage with the learning curve. But on the other hand, I mean, I don't have a rule book to follow. So I'm just going for it. So the package was very amateur, but I started selling in farmers markets in Washington, D.C., and I would team up with my friends that started a food truck and sell off their truck at Georgetown University. And really just, I feel like it's kind of the quintessential founder story where I was just hustling in Washington, D.C., trying to make it work and see if the concept was catching on. I learned, I guess two big takeaways was I learned that this product was not built for like farmers market. I needed to pursue the retail route. And I also learned that the branding was just wrong for this type of product. So that was a huge pivot point for me. Not only could I not keep up with the blog because of this new business model I was pursuing, but I also just the grapefruit, what it was, everything was getting lost. And that was the moment where I realized, okay, CPG thing is for me. I'm going to pursue that only. So I stopped doing the blog and then rebranded to PS Snacks.
That's awesome. Now, did somebody help you do this, or it's like you running a kitchen? Is there a co-founder?
No. I feel like one thing that I'm super proud of is the network that I've been able to build just through these amazing relationships and mentors and people that I have always looked up to, whether it's financially, like financial side of things, but also people in the food industry. So awesome. I've never felt, we were talking about this earlier, but I've never felt like I am alone working on this venture. But I think at the end of the day, it's like, okay, I'm also really excited to build out a team because it does get tough to do this as a one-woman show.
Yeah. And how many people now in the company?
Tough. Yeah. It's
that's okay.
Me.
Yeah.
I have an incredible community manager that works part-time. She's based out of Philly. She takes so much off my plate with regard to sample requests and customer service and just things that are super important for us as a small business, but that I often just can't get to every day.
Yeah.
My mom helps me a ton. She's been incredible. And then
free friends.
Exactly.
Free friends.
Oh, it's the support system has really just shined. It's incredible how many people have been really a part of this journey that, yes, I have not paid, but have been so impactful and just like on a personal level, but also helping. I had friends. One of the best stories is the first UNFI order that I ever got. I had 8 days to fulfill. I think it was 4 pallets or a couple thousand pounds, which at the time was a huge deal.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
And I had 25 friends come in over 8 days, and I was like, all right, I'll give you dinner.
Yeah.
This will be fun.
Yeah.
But can you help me? Because everyone had in passing said, if you ever need help, let me know. I'd love to help out. And I'm like, okay, well, this is the time. So 25 friends coming in to grind chickpeas and package and label and box up. It was one of those moments where it I'll never forget it. But it was also that, that was a turning point where I'm like, okay, I need to find a co-packer.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, no, I remember our first show was actually Fancy Food Show in New York. And, it was my husband and I, and I just had my 4th son.
Oh
actually,
my gosh.
And it was 2 weeks after I'd had a C-section.
Oh.
And I'm at the show and I'm still trying to get into the groove
right.
of the whole thing anyway. And so I called a bunch of my friends that used to work with me at AOL. And I said, we're doing this trade show. I had never been to the Fancy Food Show. I'd been to CES,
right.
A bunch of tech shows, but I'd never been to the Fancy Food Show. So they tell me I've got a 10 by 10 booth, and I was like, okay, I got this. And literally I had a card table, and I went to a party store and got something to cover the card table.
Right.
And we had a couple of chairs, folding chairs in the booth. And friends of mine in tech were they showed up there and they were like, wow, you're really not ready for this. And I was like, I know, it's so crazy. And we had a sign that said, hint water.
Right.
And I always tell entrepreneurs this story because I said, that was probably our best show. We showed up there and we had just nailed it. No one else was doing unsweetened flavored water. Still water. There were carbonated versions of the product, but this was 14 years ago.
Right.
I mean, it was crazy because we like literally had so many people that security came to the booth and said like, there can't be any more people in this area. And they were like looking at us like, how are you guys going to do this? I mean, you've never worked in the food and beverage industry. And I mean, you talked about UNFI. I didn't even know what UNFI was.
Oh, yeah.
UNFI was coming by my booth. And
right.
I'm like,
hi.
UNFI, like writing it down on a piece of paper. I was like, okay, I'll get back to you. Like,
I remember that first order I got. They're like, okay, just make sure you have the BOL. I'm like, what is a BOL? Yeah. I had to like look up like
totally.
bill of what? How do you make one of these? Yeah. And so I'm like asking, like, have you ever made one of these? It's funny. I mean, I truly believe like fake it till you make it. Yeah. And that's kind of been a internal motto for me, just because I think that there's so much you can learn and do, but you just have to do it. And if you figure it out on the fly, it almost makes it more exciting.
Yeah. No, I mean, so you talk about your like the highs and the things.
Yes.
I always look at it as like, this whole industry, I think, is a big puzzle. I mean,
definitely.
You talked about like you had a lot of you don't feel like you've ever been lonely. Like when I started this almost 14 years ago, like I actually really searched out for like mentors
right.
in the industry. And it was really hard. I mean, people were like, I don't know, maybe the snacks industry is maybe a little more open in the beverage industry. It was like, I remember there were days that, I mean, I would just be really bold and be open to calling, the big soda companies.
Definitely.
No one would talk to me. I mean, it was like very different than what I had experienced in tech.
Right.
Everybody was super open to like talking. They wouldn't give you the playbook, but they would tell you like head in that direction.
Right.
And, if you were smart enough and resourceful enough, then you would go figure it out. But anyway, I thought that was so interesting. But what kept you going when you were like, reaching lows along the way? What was like, how did you overcome those obstacles?
Definitely. I mean, one of the things that I learned early on, and part of me thinks I even learned this, at 16 when I was doing internships that I wasn't passionate about. The fact that I had started, I mean, it's all relative, right? Yeah. Like at the time, didn't even feel like a business. But the fact that I was able to start a business based on something that I was so passionate about, waking up every day. I mean, there are still highs and lows all the time, but I think over the overarching themes that like I'm so passionate about my product and the people that I interact with and really what I am able to do every day, that really keeps me going. That drives me. The spontaneity, the challenging me to think on my feet, the travel, the people that I'm able to meet and interact with. And I just think that really trumps everything else. Yeah. Like the lows are brief and painful, but if you can see the larger vision and know that, there's thousands of people that are buying this and there's thousands more that want it, like that to me is what is the most important thing every day.
Are you an athlete?
I am.
So what was your sport?
Basketball was my main sport. Played that competitively from like 3rd grade through 12th grade. But I played 3 varsity sports in high school, and it's always been very near and dear to my heart. And I'm still a big runner and work out pretty much every day. So
I always talk about, especially female entrepreneurs, if they were in athletics at least through high school, you can just spot it. Oh. And they're so used to like getting pushed down, falling down, and just getting back up again. Anyway, I've seen this. I've been really involved with EY.
Okay.
And I've seen that with like so many, no matter what the industry is, and you can just spot it.
Oh, for sure.
Along the way.
Yeah.
I feel like that, the people who ask you like, how did you do it? How did you get back up? And, my sport was gymnastics.
Okay.
And so I was just like, I don't know, like you just did.
Yes.
Like, you just like, and you always had people who were better than you on the team at
right.
something, right? Like, and you always wanted them around you,
right?
Because they were like better, but anyway, I just spot it.
I that's one of those things too, where people have asked me like, oh, have you always been entrepreneurial minded? And I don't know. I mean, I think that's a really hard question to answer. I'm only 26, so I'm like, well, I don't there's so much more to do still. But if you kind of look back and trace through my like upbringing, I mean,
no, it's the athletics.
The athletics, yes.
It really is. It trained you to be an entrepreneur and seek this stuff out.
Totally.
And get back up. I think like the get back up piece, like something that,
right.
Years of being, pushed down and having to set goals for yourself and just having to like go to sleep at night.
Yep. And I ran cross country, which is a whole different, that's like a mental game. And then I think another really interesting thing in my upbringing, my dad was a stay-at-home dad and my mom was the working breadwinner. So I think that also was just an incredible experience to see a female role model that was working so hard every day. And then also having my dad so evolved
That's awesome.
In sports, obviously, but also just in like our day-to-day life. So super incredible experience, very special.
So the food blog. So you've got, I mean, that started in college and then you continued to expand on that, create it. What do you think is like, I mean, I get asked this a lot, actually, we have like 40% of our overall business is direct to consumer now, and we have a huge initiative around content. And I'm constantly getting asked, like, where do you think the blog and the content kind of fits into an overall website?
Right.
And I mean, I've been asked by entrepreneurs who are just starting, I've been asked by billion-dollar brands that are trying to figure out, like, as they go into the online world. I mean, where do you feel like this fits into your overall sales strategy? Yeah.
So I, unfortunately, I don't do the blog anymore because, as I'm sure you...
But the recipes.
Right. Yeah. But the recipes. So one thing that I do continue to do is create recipes that use our cookie dough as an ingredient. And I think that this is so important for consumers to understand. It kind of gives it a little bit more context. Like, yes, you can eat the cookie dough as is. It's intended to be a single serve snack. So you could eat it as a almond butter substitute or a bar substitute, but you can also use it as an ingredient. So whether it's in like baked goods, or you're using it like as a frosting, or you're putting in your smoothies or shakes. There's just a lot that you can educate the consumer about. And that's how I'm using a lot of the website has recipes. I'm using my social media to do that. We have a Friday newsletter. So I think that's where the content, like, yes, it's a brand, but I'm also trying to be a personality to customers, because I think it helps give context as to like how to use the product, when to use it. I just think it's a huge piece of the sales strategy. You have to give people something to want to either try or eat or buy.
Well, I think it also allows you to get information out.
Yes.
It's not necessarily salesy, but it helps to build your brand.
Exactly.
For what you're doing overall.
Right.
So I think like that's something that a lot of these large brands don't really understand.
Right.
But I think it's something that you guys are doing super well.
Thank you.
So what do you wish, like, what's your big wish? If you could have one wish for PS Snacks for 2019, what would it be?
Oh, man. So it's been, as the past 8 months have been a very interesting time, just I feel like as the founder and CEO, where I've actually been working quite a bit on infrastructural improvements so that we can grow. So it's been a little bit of like slowing down in order to speed up.
And the company's based still in DC, right?
No. So we're Denver. I mean, because it's just me.
And you wanted to get to Denver.
I, for business and personal reasons, just felt like that was the better fit long term. I was living in New York City before, which was an amazing experience. I feel like I could check that off the list. But for long-term growth strategy and needing to build out a team and really looking at what this business could look like in the next 5 to 10 years, I couldn't stay in New York. So that was really the catalyst for me wanting to move to Denver.
Did you have an investor in
Denver? Not in Denver actually, but part of the reason for the timing of the move was he kind of challenged me like, okay, so are you bound to New York? I'm like, definitely not.
Yeah.
I can move tomorrow if you'd like me to. And I just think for long-term, cost of living, quality of life, there's just so many things that you can find better options outside of New York. So that was really the catalyst for that. But my wish for 2019, I have a lot of things that I've been working on behind the scenes that I haven't been able to really debut to the world yet because it's been so under the wraps. I mean, I've been working with third-party agencies and investors and mentors and just all different types of people the past 8 months to really get this vision ready to roll. Yeah. In 2019, now we're able to debut that in the next few months. So I'm just really, really wishing for a successful launch and growth from there, as well as my goal is to start building out a team. And I think that is going to be huge, not only for the business, but just for me as the founder, because I'm very excited to have people that I can fall back on too.
And what are you looking for? What kind of like people?
Yeah. Ops. Mm-hmm. That's definitely my weakness. Yeah. I love being the storyteller, the founder, the visionary, the one working on product development, the one behind the social media, the one that's educating consumers about how to use the products. But operations and supply chain and logistics, I just need to hand that off to someone. Mm-hmm. So hoping to find someone that has experience in refrigerated supply chain and really can help me not only scale as I'm hoping we will, not just in 2019 and beyond, but one that can actually have an impact long term. I'm
smiling a little bit because I always catch people when they say like someone who's better than me. That's not my forte. I always say like, maybe this is even sort of while I was an athlete. Like,
right.
I learned early on like my two focuses in gymnastics were bars and vault.
Okay.
And like, I remember when I was young, it was so hard for me to like watch people who were like, could just go out on the floor and do stuff. And I could do a little bit, but they were so much better than I was. And beam, the same thing. Like I was fine.
Yes.
But I was like not ever going to rock it like I would on vault and bars and my upper body strength. You can't tell now because core and everything in there. But basically like that was my deal. And so I learned early on, like I was almost recruiting. And when I was younger, like I would always understand, like I would gain a good understanding of what they could do for our team, mm-hmm. but also have an appreciation for what they could do. And so I always say to founders who are, starting and also I speak on college campuses a lot too. I'm like, you want to find people like at every single step along the way who you always as a founder want to understand. Like you want to understand the finance, you want to understand the operations, you want to still, I was speaking at Harvard Business School last week and was saying to them like, I can actually talk pH with like the best of them right now in water, but I'm going to I'll hire somebody in who can actually do it even in their sleep better than me. Right. Like, but I'm educated on it, so I can actually get through it enough. But that's the main thing. Right. That hire people who there's so many people along the way who will tell you like that they're just going to wave their magic wand and they're going to solve all your problems. And and the reality is that most of those people won't. I'll take your money. Exactly. And they'll take your equity and it won't happen. So,
and that's, I think, part of the reason where, so PS Snacks officially under that brand name launched a little over 2 years ago. And I still think part of the reason I haven't hired anyone is there's so much that I could do on my own to get it where I wanted it to be to then attract the right people. Yeah. I haven't, as you mentioned earlier, like it's tough to find the right people that are not only qualified, but just culturally the right match.
Totally. And also these people who have had experience, what I found is like, we would interview like people who had come from the large soda companies and, we have a product, actually when we launched our product, we were the first beverage outside of juice that wasn't using preservatives in our product. Wow. And so we would interview all these people who had like produced products for the large soda companies and they would come in and they'd be like, oh yeah, I can do this. And we're like, but have you ever done an unpreserved product? Right. And they're like, no, but I got it. Right. I got it all figured out. And like, we learned like they didn't have it all figured
Right.
out because no one had done what we were doing.
Exactly.
And
yes.
so, and unfortunately, they had almost been brainwashed to think that whatever they had learned was like gospel. And so they would come in to our company and be like, well, you know, you guys are crazy founders. You don't really understand this. This can't be done. Like the times that I heard can't
right.
were like so debilitating for me, which I was just like, get this person out of here.
Right.
Because it's like, it's ruining my juju.
Right.
I mean, like I was like, you know, you've got to like ask them to leave the room. And what I figured out is that it may take me longer in order to figure this stuff out. And I can go and ask a million people, but actually having somebody in who, you know, is going to wave their magic wand and solve my problem is like probably not going to happen.
Exactly.
And so I always like tell people like kind of figure the problem out first and then hire somebody in
right.
to manage that.
And that's exactly, I mean, the past, again, 8 months has been me putting my head down with third-party groups, I should say, where I know the problem. Let's get the solution in place so that I can then build a strategy and then hand it off to someone in ops as an example. Like, I don't want this person coming in and telling me, you know, well, you shouldn't have the freeze and thaw distribution method for your cookie dough because it's difficult. Well, I'm like, yeah, of course it's difficult, but we're also like, that's how I've been able to open all these doors. And that's what's helped me thrive in this region of Whole Foods and certain things where, yeah, it's not easy, but like, that's how we're going to move forward. So this is like a non-starter for me. Like, I just need to get all these things in place and then start finding the right people.
Yeah. Find people who think that they may not have the vision that you've got, but they're not afraid to actually say that they don't know.
Exactly.
And something might be possible.
Right.
And it's such a key thing. And it's so hard to find these people. It's like, you know, especially when, you know, you're young or you've never done, I mean, in my case, like I'd never done a food and beverage company before. And so there were like a million people who said, she's going to be roadkill in like 4 seconds. And, you know, I'm still here.
Yeah. And then some, right?
Yeah. Like and I think like that is so key.
Definitely.
And
it's great advice.
Sort of, and also not getting the company taken away from you too.
Yes.
I think that that's the other thing too, that, you know, we found along the way, we talked to many investors who, you know, they had never been operators before.
Right.
They didn't really understand what I'm articulating to you now. And so they'd be like, oh, they've taken a company from, you know, 10 to 40 million. They're going to be awesome for you. And like, you just have to be really careful.
Yes. And that's, I mean, part of there are some times where I'm like, oh, I really wish I had like a co-founder or someone that can take this half of the burden off my shoulders. But at the end of the day, I mean, I really wouldn't have it any other way because I feel like being a sole founder, I mean, I know, to your point, like I can talk food science to the point where someone's like, do you have a food science background? I'm like, no, I've just been involved in every single conversation where you learn every single facet of the business. And I think that does make me not only equipped, but also very particular when it comes to hiring, just knowing that like, okay, the perfect person might not show up, but there are certain things that I want within this team that, you know, it's either complementing my strengths or filling some sort of void, but it is definitely hard to find. And
you'll find them.
Yeah. I'm trying to run all the parallel paths. So it's the fun part of being the entrepreneur.
Yeah, you totally will. So
thank you.
Well, this is so much fun. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you.
Where do people find PS Snacks today?
So because I started in DC, most of our distribution is still on the East Coast. But again, part of this move to Denver and what I've been working on the past year, let's call it, a lot of growth in the near future. So I recommend people follow us on Instagram. We have a store locator and we'll be updating that as we continue to grow. Online? I do online, but because it's refrigerated, you know, I'm like, I apologize in advance. It is just expensive for us. So I do absorb some of the costs, but working on getting the shipping costs down. So the goal will be more stores, making it more accessible and affordable for people. But yes, if you're desperate for chickpea-based cookie dough, we do sell it online.
2019, I think that is a major.
It's a big,
initiative.
yes.
So. Do you know Chloe?
Yes.
Chloe, yeah.
Love that team too.
Yeah. So I was speaking at the Chobani incubator.
Awesome.
Anyway, they were part of the Chobani incubator, and I noticed that they were on Amazon,
the Fresh or the Go. Yeah.
Fresh. And at least in New York City.
Yeah. We sell on jet.com actually. Yeah. That was a cool account early on where it just opened some doors mostly to get up in the Northeast and areas where we hadn't distributed yet. Whole Foods is my key account thus far and really working on expanding in those
awesome.
Key metropolitan cities too. Yes. And that's been, so I've been able to secure some accounts on college campuses, mainly Wake Forest, on my own alma mater, but that also has just been, it's like these little victories that show the potential to replicate.
I think it's a big thing. I mean,
definitely
our distribution in food service, a lot of the tech firms, and then got into college campuses, and then, people start to notice.
Right. So. I was saying that I always get a hint water at the airport. Yeah. It's my go-to.
Airports are
huge.
For me. It makes my life a lot easier.
I bet.
After TSA.
Exactly.
I can actually grab some bottles.
I know. That's so nice.
So anyway, this was so much fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
By.
It's so nice to be here.
Good luck with the show.
If you like what you heard, please help spread the word and leave us a review. You can also follow along with me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn at Kara Goldin. Do you have a question for me or want to nominate an innovator to spotlight? Please talk to me at Kara Goldin on Twitter. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, be unstoppable.